This is not just another video about VA claims. This is a warning. I spent years on the inside reviewing the stacks, seeing the mistakes, and watching veterans lose thousands of dollars and years of their lives, all because of simple, avoidable paperwork traps. These aren't complex legal maneuvers. They are basic administrative errors that the system is designed, intentionally or unintentionally, to exploit. If you are a veteran, or if you are helping a veteran file a claim, you need to hear this. We're talking about 10 specific pitfalls that can derail your entire compensation process, leading to delays that stretch into years or outright denials that cost you the monthly benefits you earned and deserve. We're diving straight into the deep end because the first trap is the one that sets the stage for every failure that follows. The first and perhaps most insidious trap is the ambiguity trap, using vague language in symptom descriptions. When you fill out those forms, whether it's the initial claim or the subsequent forms provided by your private doctor, you must understand that the VA rater is a bureaucrat, not a mind reader. They are looking for specific, quantifiable data points that map directly to the schedule for rating disabilities, 38 CFR Part 4. Vague language is the enemy of a successful claim. When a veteran writes, "My back hurts sometimes," or "I feel down a lot," they are setting themselves up for failure. The rater reads that and thinks, occasional discomfort, not severe enough for a rating. Let's unpack this crucial point because the difference between a successful claim and a denied one often comes down to just 3 or 4 specific descriptive words. Think about the physical claim first. If you have knee pain, you don't say, "My knee is bad." You need to describe the functional limitation. You need to use action verbs and quantify the restriction. For example, instead of "My knee hurts," you should write, "I experience sharp shooting pain radiating down my tibia upon attempting to climb more than 3 steps, limiting my extension to 45 degrees and requiring the use of a brace for any sustained weight-bearing activity lasting over 20 minutes." Do you see the difference? The second statement gives the rater measurable data points, 45 degrees of limitation, specific activities that cause pain, and the necessity of an assistive device. The first statement is meaningless noise in the VA system. The same principle applies, perhaps even more critically, to mental health claims, such as PTSD or anxiety. Saying, "I'm sad" or "I get angry easily" is the ambiguity trap in full effect. The VA requires descriptions of functional impairment across specific domains, occupational and social functioning. You must detail how the symptom prevents you from living a normal life. Instead of vague feelings, describe behaviors. "I have difficulty maintaining employment due to recurring panic attacks that force me to leave the workplace environment, resulting in 3 job terminations in the last 2 years." Or, "My social isolation is profound. I avoid all gatherings of more than 2 people, including family events, due to hypervigilance and an inability to tolerate unexpected noise, which has led to severe marital strain." Consider the case of a veteran named Marcus. Marcus filed a claim for chronic fatigue and joint pain. On his initial forms, he wrote, "I am tired all the time and my joints ache." The VA denied him, stating his symptoms were nonspecific and typical of general aging. Marcus came to us and we refiled, focusing entirely on descriptive language. We documented that the fatigue was so severe he required 2 mandatory naps per day, totaling 4 hours, just to function, and that the joint pain led to a measurable limitation of motion in his wrist and ankles, preventing him from lifting objects heavier than 5 pounds or standing for more than 30 minutes. This switch from tired to requiring 4 hours of mandatory rest daily, impacting employment, was the key that unlocked his rating. The VA rater needs to be able to check a box that correlates to a rating level, and vague language gives them no box to check except denied. Avoid the ambiguity trap at all costs by being painfully, clinically specific about your functional limitations. Moving quickly now, because the second trap builds directly on the first, but introduces the element of time and causality. This is the missing link trap, failing to connect current symptoms to active duty events, the nexus statement. You can have the most detailed, clinically specific description of your disability in the world, but if you cannot explicitly draw a straight, undeniable line from that disability back to a specific event, injury, or condition that occurred or was aggravated during your active duty service, the claim will fail. The VA calls this the nexus. It is the bridge between service and disability, and if that bridge is missing, your claim is stuck on the wrong side of the river. Veterans often fall into this trap because they assume the connection is obvious. They think, well, I was a mechanic on an aircraft carrier for 4 years, and now I have hearing loss. Clearly, the service caused it. While that seems logical to a reasonable person, the VA requires proof of the nexus. They require evidence that the condition began in service or that an existing condition was aggravated beyond its natural progression by service. The most common failure point here is relying solely on your own testimony. Your testimony is important, but it is not a medical opinion. To beat the missing link trap, you almost always require a strong, favorable medical opinion, a nexus letter from a qualified healthcare professional. This letter must explicitly state that, based on a review of your service records, medical history, and current symptoms, it is at least as likely as not, the VA standard, that your current disability is a direct result of or secondary to your active duty service. Let's look at a veteran, Sarah, who served in the Navy. She developed debilitating migraines years after separating. She filed a claim, noting she had headaches during service. The VA denied it, citing a lack of continuity and stating there was no medical documentation of chronic migraines in her service treatment records, STRs. Sarah fell into the trap by assuming her memory was sufficient proof. To correct this, we needed to establish the nexus. We had a private neurologist review her service record, which showed she was prescribed high-strength ibuprofen multiple times for tension headaches while deployed. The neurologist then wrote a letter stating that those documented tension headaches were the likely onset of her current chronic migraine condition, and that the stress of deployment was the environmental trigger that made the condition chronic. This letter, bridging the gap between a minor complaint in service, tension headache, and a major disability years later, chronic migraine, provided the essential nexus. Remember, the VA system is fundamentally adversarial. When they see a gap, they exploit it. If your service treatment records are sparse or missing, the nexus letter becomes even more critical. It must be detailed, citing specific medical literature or regulatory statutes, like the presumptive conditions for Agent Orange or Gulf War service, if applicable. Never assume the VA will connect the dots for you. You must provide the connecting wire, and that wire is the robust, medically sound nexus statement. Now, let's talk about the silent killer of many claims, the one that doesn't seem like a big deal until the VA uses it to dismiss your entire timeline. This is the third trap. The date discrepancy trap. Inconsistent dates between medical records, lay statements, and official forms. Consistency is paramount in the VA claims process. Every single date you provide, the date an injury occurred, the date a symptom worsened, the date you sought treatment, the date you separated from service, must align across all documents. If the dates conflict, even slightly, the VA rater has grounds to question the veracity of your entire claim, introducing doubt that can lead directly to a denial. The date discrepancy trap often catches veterans who are trying to reconstruct years of medical history from memory. For instance, a veteran might state in their personal lay statement that their back injury occurred during a training exercise in January 2005. But then, when submitting buddy statements, a friend writes that the injury happened in late 2004. This small, seemingly harmless discrepancy creates a red flag. The VA rater's job is to find reasons for denial, and conflicting dates provide an easy out. They can conclude that the claimant is unreliable or that the events described did not happen as alleged. This trap is especially common when veterans file for increased ratings. They might claim that their condition worsened significantly starting in 2018, based on when they noticed increased pain. However, their private medical records might show that they started receiving stronger medication or specialized treatment in late 2017. The VA will use the earliest documented date of worsening, 2017, to determine the effective date of the increase, potentially costing the veteran months of retroactive pay if the claim was filed later than 2018. But the greater danger is when the discrepancy is in the onset of the condition. If you claim the condition started in service, but your STRs show no complaints until 6 months after separation, the VA will likely argue that the condition is post-service related, unless you have a powerful nexus to overcome that gap. To avoid this trap, you must create a master timeline. Before you submit a single form, sit down and map out every key event: the date of the injury, the date of the first medical visit, the date of separation, and the dates of major symptom changes. Cross-reference this master timeline with every piece of evidence: your STRs, private doctor notes, buddy statements, and spouse statements. If a buddy statement says around the summer of 2007, you need to follow up and ask them to be as specific as possible, perhaps referencing a known deployment or event that occurred that summer. Precision matters here more than almost anywhere else. A date error isn't just a typo, it's a potential reason for denial. The fourth trap is one of inaction, a consequence of understandable human reluctance to deal with bureaucracy, but one that carries devastating financial consequences. This is the waiting too long trap, delaying filing after separation. This trap doesn't necessarily lead to a denial of service connection, though it can, but it almost always leads to the loss of your effective date, meaning you miss out on potentially years of retroactive benefits, which can easily total tens of thousands of dollars. The core principle the VA operates on is the effective date. Generally, your effective date for benefits is the later of two dates: the date the VA received your claim or the date entitlement arose. If you file within 1 year of separation from active duty, the effective date can be the day following your discharge. This is the golden window. Missing this window is the waiting too long trap. Let's imagine two veterans, both suffering from the exact same knee injury sustained during active duty. Veteran A files his claim 11 months after separation. Veteran B, dealing with the stress of transition and assuming the paperwork would be too difficult, waits 14 months to file. Veteran A, when his claim is finally approved 5 years later, receives retroactive pay calculated from the day after his separation. Veteran B, however, only receives retroactive pay calculated from the date the VA received his application, the 14-month mark. That 3-month delay in filing cost Veteran B over a year of back pay, potentially $15,000 to $30,000, depending on his final rating. The urgency here cannot be overstated. Even if you don't have all your evidence ready, you must file an intent to file, ITF, form immediately upon separation or even before. The ITF locks in your effective date for up to 1 year. This means you have 365 days to gather all your medical opinions, buddy statements, and records, and as long as you submit the final claim package within that year, your effective date remains the day the ITF was submitted. Many veterans get caught in this trap because they focus too much on gathering the perfect evidence package before submitting anything. They spend 18 months seeing specialists, getting opinions, and organizing files, only to find they sacrificed their effective date. Stop waiting for perfection. File the intent to file now. Get the clock started in your favor. The VA is slow. You need to leverage every tool available to maximize your retroactive pay, and the ITF is the most powerful tool you have against the waiting too long trap. The fifth trap is purely administrative but can cause massive processing headaches. The incorrect form trap, using outdated or wrong forms for specific claims. The VA bureaucracy is vast, and their forms are constantly updated, revised, or replaced. Submitting a claim on an outdated version of a form or using the wrong form entirely for the type of claim you are making is a guaranteed way to see your claim returned without action, delaying your effective date and increasing your frustration exponentially. For instance, the application for disability compensation is VA Form 21-526EZ. If you download a version from a non-VA website that is 6 months old, or if you use an older version you saved on your desktop, the VA may reject it outright. Why? Because the VA updates these forms frequently to comply with new legislation, procedural changes, or data collection requirements. An outdated form might be missing a crucial required field or certification that the current version contains. A common variant of this trap occurs when veterans use the Standard Disability Compensation Form 21-526EZ for claims that require a specific, separate form. For example, if you are claiming benefits for an increased rating, or if you are filing a claim based on a specific type of benefit like individual unemployability, IU, or even dependency claims, there are specific forms designed for those actions. Using the general form for a specialized purpose often leads to the claim being misrouted, lost in the system, or simply returned for resubmission on the correct paperwork. The solution here is simple, but requires diligence. Always, without exception, download the form directly from the official VA website, va.gov. T1. The day you plan to fill it out. Check the revision date at the bottom of the form to ensure it is the most current version. If you are filing an appeal or a notice of disagreement, no D, you must ensure you are using the correct form relevant to the current appeals system, the AMA, Appeals Modernization Act. The legacy system forms are still floating around, and using them is a catastrophic error that can cost you months of processing time. This trap is pure administrative friction. Eliminate it by verifying every form number and revision date before submission. We are halfway through this critical list, and the next trap moves us from the paperwork itself to the critical point of interaction with the VA system, the medical evaluation. This is the sixth trap. The C&P prep trap. Treating the compensation and pension exam like a regular doctor's visit, minimizing symptoms. The compensation and pension C&P exam is arguably the most critical juncture in your entire claims process. It is the VA's opportunity to assess the severity of your disability and confirm the nexus. Yet, countless veterans sabotage their own claims by walking into the C&P exam with the mindset of a typical patient seeing their doctor. They minimize their pain, they fail to disclose the full extent of their functional limitations, and they often try to tough it out. This is a catastrophic error. You must understand that the C&P examiner is not your treating physician. Their job is not to provide treatment. Their job is to provide the VA rater with an objective assessment of your disability, using specific terminology and measurements required by the VA rating schedule. If you tell the examiner, "I'm having a pretty good day today," or if you fail to mention that your back pain requires you to use a cane 3 days a week, the examiner will document the best-case scenario, leading to an unfairly low rating or even a denial. The C&P prep trap stems from military culture, where minimizing pain is ingrained. You must shed that mindset immediately for the C&P exam. You need to describe your condition at its worst, detailing the frequency, severity, and duration of your symptoms, and relating everything back to functional limitation. Here's the key to avoiding this trap. Preparation. Before the C&P exam, write down a detailed list of your symptoms and how they impact your daily life on a bad day. Practice describing your functional limitations using the specific language you used to avoid the ambiguity trap, Trap 1. If you have limited range of motion in your shoulder, do not try to move your arm past the point of pain during the exam, even if the examiner encourages you to push through it. If you push through the pain, the examiner will document the maximum range of motion achieved, not the functional range you use daily, which is what the VA rates on. You must articulate that pushing beyond that point causes pain, weakness, or instability. Furthermore, you must ensure the examiner addresses every single claimed condition. If you filed for hearing loss, PTSD, and a knee injury, but the examiner only focuses on the knee, you must politely but firmly remind them that you are there for all three conditions. Failure to address all conditions in the C&P report means the VA has no medical evidence on those conditions, leading to an inevitable denial or request for a new exam, which wastes months. Treat the C&P exam as a formal deposition of your disability, not a casual chat with a doctor. Your rating and years of potential benefits depend entirely on the documentation generated in that 1 hour. Now we pivot to a trap of omission, where veterans leave money on the table by focusing only on the obvious. This is the 7th trap. The secondary condition trap. Only claiming primary conditions and ignoring secondary service connections. A primary service-connected disability often leads directly to other conditions or aggravates pre-existing non-service-connected conditions. These resulting conditions are called secondary service connections, and they are fully rateable by the VA. The secondary condition trap occurs when veterans successfully claim their primary condition, e.g., a foot injury, but fail to realize that the resulting secondary conditions, EEs, are knee and hip pain from altered gait, are also compensable. The financial impact of this trap is enormous, as secondary conditions can significantly boost your combined rating. For example, a veteran might be rated 30% for a primary service-connected back injury. Because of the back injury, they have become sedentary, leading to weight gain, which then causes sleep apnea. Sleep apnea, if moderate to severe, can be rated at 50%. If the veteran only claims the back injury, they stay at 30%. If they successfully claim sleep apnea secondary to their back injury, their combined rating jumps significantly, potentially to 70% or higher. The key to avoiding this trap is thinking holistically about your health. Ask yourself, what new conditions have developed since the onset of my service-connected disability? What conditions have worsened? Common secondary connections include orthopedic, knee, hip, or ankle pain secondary to a service-connected back or foot injury due to compensatory movements. Mental health, depression or anxiety secondary to chronic pain, TBI, or other physical disabilities that limit life enjoyment. Internal, hypertension or cardiovascular issues secondary to medication used to treat the primary condition or secondary to PTSD, chronic stress. To successfully claim a secondary condition, you must establish a clear medical nexus between the primary service-connected disability and the secondary condition. This requires the same strong evidence used for primary claims, often a nexus letter from a physician stating that the secondary condition is proximately due to or the result of the service-connected primary condition. Do not let the VA assume you only want compensation for the main injury. Catalog and claim every single condition that stems from your service-connected disability. The 8th trap deals with family and financial stability, and it's a simple oversight with profound consequences. The incomplete dependency trap. Errors or omissions when claiming dependents, spouse, just children. If you have a combined disability rating of 30% or higher, the VA provides additional compensation for your dependents, your spouse, minor children, and dependent parents. Many veterans successfully achieve their rating, but either forget to file the dependency claim, VA Form 21686C, or they make administrative errors on that form, leading to delays in receiving the full correct monthly payment. The most common errors include 1. Failure to update. A veteran gets married or has a child. After their initial rating is granted and they fail to notify the VA promptly. The VA will not automatically know about the new dependent. You must file the 21686C to update your status. Every month you delay filing after a life change, marriage, birth, you lose out on dependency pay for that period. 2. Inaccurate information. Providing incorrect dates of birth, Social Security numbers, or marriage dates. Just like the date discrepancy trap, Trap 3, these small errors create massive bureaucratic delays while the VA tries to verify the information. 3. Failure to provide required documentation. The VA requires specific documents, such as marriage certificates or birth certificates, to verify dependency status. Failure to include legible copies of these documents with the 21686C means the claim is incomplete and stalls immediately. The dependency claim is often seen as a minor add-on, but it significantly increases your monthly compensation. For a veteran rated 100%, adding a spouse and 2 children can increase the monthly benefit by hundreds of dollars. Over the course of a lifetime, this oversight can cost a family hundreds of thousands of dollars. To avoid this trap, treat the dependency claim with the same meticulous care as your primary disability claim. File the correct form, 21686C. Ensure every date and SSN is perfect, and include certified copies of all required supporting documentation. And critically, make it a habit to notify the VA immediately of any change in dependency status, marriage, divorce, birth, or when a child turns 18 and potentially continues education. The 9th trap is a modern problem born from the shift to digital submission, and it's surprisingly common. The digital signature trap, improperly signing digital submissions or failing to certify documents. The VA encourages and often prefers digital submission of forms and evidence via the eBenefits or va.gov portals. While this speeds up processing, it introduces a new hazard, the improper digital signature or certification. When you submit a form digitally, the VA requires specific methods of signing to verify that the submission is truly from the claimant. Simply typing your name into a signature box on a PDF is usually insufficient. You must use the VA's approved signature methods, which often involve using your authenticated login credentials, DS Login, ID.me, or similar, to certify the submission. If you are submitting forms that require a wet signature, like a notice of disagreement or a medical release, and you simply upload a scanned image of a form with a typed name, the VA may deem the submission invalid. A critical component of this trap involves lay evidence, such as buddy statements or spouse statements. These statements must be signed and dated by the person providing the testimony, and often require the statement to include language certifying that the information is true and accurate to the best of their knowledge. If a buddy statement is submitted unsigned, it is essentially worthless evidence. The consequences of the digital signature trap are immediate. The VA may reject the form entirely, or worse, deem the evidence submitted, like a critical nexus letter, to be unauthenticated, removing it from consideration. The claim then proceeds without that crucial piece of evidence, almost guaranteeing a denial. The solution is twofold. First, when submitting via the VA portal, always follow the on-screen instructions for authentication and certification precisely. Second, when submitting external documents, like lay statements or private medical opinions, Ensure they contain a clear, legible, actual signature and date, and that the signatory has certified the truthfulness of the statement. Do not let a simple signature omission invalidate months of hard work gathering evidence. Finally, we arrive at the 10th trap, the one that catches veterans who have received their first bad news. This is the most time-sensitive and dangerous trap of all. The denial response trap, mismanaging the notice of disagreement, NOD, or appeal timeline. Receiving a denial is emotionally crushing, and many veterans, disheartened, simply set the letter aside, believing the fight is over. This is the denial response trap. The VA system is designed to allow you to appeal unfavorable decisions, but this process is governed by extremely strict deadlines. Missing a deadline, even by one day, can permanently close the door on appealing that specific decision, forcing you to start a new claim from scratch and losing all retroactive benefits tied to the original effective date. Under the current Appeals Modernization Act, AMA, you generally have 1 year start from the date on the decision letter to initiate an appeal. This appeal can take several paths: supplemental claim, higher-level review, or appeal to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. The specific path you choose depends on whether you have new evidence, supplemental claim, or believe the VA made an error based on the existing evidence, higher-level review, or board appeal. The trap is often set by misunderstanding the 1 year clock. If you receive a denial in January 2023, you have until January 2024 to file a subsequent action. If you miss that date, the denial becomes final. If you file a supplemental claim within that year, the clock stops on that original decision and you preserve your effective date. However, if that supplemental claim is also denied, a new 1 year clock starts from the date of the new denial for the next level of appeal. Veterans often assume that because they filed one appeal, the original claim date is permanently protected, but if they fail to act within the subsequent 1 year window after a new denial, they can lose everything. To avoid this trap, you must institute a rigorous tracking system for all VA decision letters. The moment you receive a denial, mark the 1 year deadline prominently. Never let a denial sit unattended. If you disagree with the decision, you must act, either by filing a supplemental claim with new evidence or requesting a higher-level review before that 1 year clock expires. The VA is unforgiving on these deadlines. Protect your right to appeal, and more importantly, protect your original effective date by responding immediately and correctly to every denial or unfavorable decision you receive. We have covered the 10 most critical paperwork traps that ex-VA workers see derail claims every single day, from the vague language that hides your pain, to the missing link connecting service to disability, to the simple date errors that create doubt, and the catastrophic mistake of missing appeal deadlines. Remember, the VA process is not about treating your symptoms. It is about proving your entitlement through evidence and meticulous administration. Your success depends on your ability to navigate this bureaucracy flawlessly. Be specific, be consistent, be prepared for your CNP exam, and never ever ignore a deadline. Your service earned these benefits. Now, go claim them with the diligence they deserve.